The day I went to New York, Sophia got engaged to someone else. Everyone thought I would return to Washington overnight and cause a huge stir at the engagement ceremony. What they didn't know was that I would neither go back nor take any action. Because no one could imagine that before going to New York, I was happily engaged before her. From then on, you go your way and I will cross the bridge. In this life, we no longer have intersection. Now, let's start the story. If you like it, remember to subscribe. The last time I confessed my love to Sophia, I ended up embarrassing myself quite a bit. There were many people sitting in the private box, but it was deathly silent, and no one said a word. After a full few minutes, David, who was sitting next to her, stood up to smooth things over and said, "James, you're Sophia's brother. This isn't appropriate, is it?" A blonde-haired guy in the corner sneered and said, "What's inappropriate about it? He's just an adoptive brother from a different father and mother, an orphan." Laughter rose and fell, gradually turning into a continuous sound. I glanced at Sophia, who was covering her mouth and laughing uncontrollably, gritted my teeth, grabbed the blonde-haired guy who called me an orphan, lifted him up by his collar, and punched him in the nose. The next second, Sophia shouted, "James, stop. How much more unpleasant do I have to be?" She furrowed her brows tightly, stood up, and looked up at me, saying, "I've clearly rejected you many times before. Why do you still keep pestering me?" I pushed the guy away, twitched the corner of my mouth, and asked, "You rejected me, so why do you get angry with me, cry, and make a scene every time I talk about having a girlfriend?" Sophia said, "That's because you're my brother, an adopted son of our family. If you casually marry some inappropriate person, it will put my parents in a difficult position." I laughed and said, "What about the kiss on my 20th birthday?" Sophia looked into my eyes, a hint of faint disgust flashing through her eyes. She said, "James, I was drunk that night, and my mind was all messed up. You don't think that just because I kissed you, I like you, do you?" I pinched the center of my brows and said in a deep voice, "Sophia, you've had 4 boyfriends behind my back, but every time I taught the other guy a lesson, you immediately broke up with them and then coquettishly told me that you wouldn't do it again. What's the reason for this?" She replied, "That's because I haven't met the person I truly like." As she spoke, Sophia nestled into David's arms and said, "James, listen carefully. I'm only going to say this one last time. I like David, and I'm going to marry him. Your previous methods won't work this time at all." David looked at her with a smug expression, dotingly saying, "Sophia." Sophia didn't hesitate to stand on tiptoe and press her lips against his. David cupped the back of her head and responded more passionately. They kissed passionately and intensely, as if no one else was around. At that moment, I recalled the kiss on my 20th birthday, which was also so intense and passionate that I had been dreaming for 4 years and blindly thought that Sophia liked me. Sophia moved out of the house and moved in with David. The day she moved out, I was busy with my graduation defense at school. Choosing such a day was probably to prevent me from going to find David's trouble. But this time, I didn't get furious as I did before. After feeling a slight discomfort in my heart, I immediately shook my head and threw it all behind me. In the evening, I had a graduation dinner with some of my classmates who I had a good relationship with. However, I didn't go looking for David, but he came to me on his own. When I was on my way to the restroom, I met David. He said to me, "James, Sophia is here too. Do you want to come over?" I shook my head and said, "I made an appointment with my classmates, so I won't go." David suddenly leaned in and said, "James, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. Don't speak ill of me in front of Sophia's parents, or I'll definitely make you pay." I reached out and kept him at a distance, smiling and saying, "David, if you hadn't come to tell me, I wouldn't have thought of doing that. Since you've come to tell me yourself, if I don't speak ill of you, wouldn't your words be in vain?" A hint of fear flashed through his eyes. I continued to mock him, saying, "I heard that your father was in prison for extortion for several years. Have you told Sophia about this? I really should go and remind Uncle and Aunt right away." The next second, David punched me in the left shoulder. However, I didn't dodge. I quickly kicked him diagonally in the knee. David let out a scream of pain and knelt down. Only then did I realize that my left shoulder was extremely painful. When I looked closely, this bastard was actually holding the tip of a key and stabbing me with it. Anger surged in my heart, and I wished I could drag him into the restroom and give him a taste of his own medicine. However, the next moment, a shrill voice sounded, "James, what are you doing?" Before I could react, with a slap landed heavily on my face. I turned my head and looked at Sophia, who had hit me for the first time, expressionlessly. David rubbed his knee and said, "Sophia, don't misunderstand. James might just be in a bad mood today." Sophia said resentfully, "You're still speaking for him. He's always been like this, bullying others. I'm really fed up." Sophia bent down and helped David up. Her eyes were full of anger, and she looked at me coldly, saying, "James, apologize." I remained silent. She shouted at me again, "You bastard, apologize." David, being supported by her, slightly and imperceptibly hooked the corner of his mouth at me, looking like a small-minded person who had achieved success. My shoulder was bleeding, and the blood flowed down my arm to my wrist, forming two glaring lines of blood. But Sophia seemed not to notice at all. The way she looked at me was as if I was a heinous bad person. I suddenly laughed self-deprecatingly, spread my hands, and said, "Why should I apologize?" Sophia seemed to be slightly stunned, but then quickly bit her lip and said, "Why don't you apologize for bullying others?" I said brazenly, "Why do I only bully him and not others?" Sophia blushed with anger and cursed, "You're really shameless. If my parents knew what kind of person you are." I interrupted her and said meaningfully, "Your parents might indeed need to know certain things." David looked at me and quickly persuaded Sophia, "Forget it, Sophia. How could I accept his apology?" Sophia immediately felt extremely distressed. She said, "James, I've said it. David is different from others. No matter how you bully him, I won't break up with him. This will only make me love him more and hate you more." She helped David turn around and leave. I thought alone for a long time. The wound on my shoulder was painful, but my heart was empty and light. I knew that at that moment, all those so-called obsessions had turned to dust and disappeared completely. What they wanted to do was none of my business. That night, David posted 3 moments on WeChat in a row, and all of them were screenshot and sent to me by people with ulterior motives in the circle, especially Sophia's replies, which were circled out particularly. I knew that privately they wanted to see me make a fool of myself. In the past, I might have been enraged by their interactions, then gone to teach those blonde-haired guys a lesson, and then Sophia would immediately break up with the person and coquettishly tell me that she would never do it again. This undoubtedly gave me the illusion that she actually cared about me. But this time, I ignored it and instead dialed a phone number from 7 days ago. "Ms. Emily, this is James. I've thought about what you said the other day. When I was 7 years old, my parents died in an accident. At that time, Sophia's father had a good relationship with my father, and he decided to take me in. Ms. Emily was my mother's best friend when she was young. Later, she eloped with her lover, and my mother gave her a sum of money to do business in New York. However, by the time she finally established herself in New York, my parents had already passed away. Ms. Emily wanted me to go to New York to live because the business that my mother and she had partnered in had been managed by her on behalf, and now it was just the right time to hand it over to me. On the other hand, she also hinted that she wanted to fulfill the promise she and my mother made when they were young, and let me and her daughter fulfill the betrothal agreement they made back then. 7 days ago, I didn't agree, but I didn't want to reject her face to face, so I just said I would consider it. But just tonight, I had let go of the obsession of these years. The behavior of being a lovesick fool who pines for someone unrequitedly is too ridiculous. I don't want to be the laughingstock in the circle anymore. It's better to go to a new place and start my career anew. Half a year ago, Sophia insisted that I leave the head office and develop in New York. She even had a tantrum with her father about it, but I never agreed. Now I think it's a good opportunity. Perhaps, somehow, it's the arrangement of fate. On the other end of the phone, Ms. Emily laughed very happily. She said, "James, Olivia has been waiting for you to nod. She's ready to fly to North Washington to pick you up in person." I held the phone, feeling embarrassed. I clearly agreed to go to New York to live, but the next second, it seemed that my life events had been arranged. However, it wasn't a bad thing. The laughter coming from the phone made me feel a bit dazed. After living together for 15 years and liking someone for 7 years, it turned out that it only took 7 days to completely let go. The day Sophia and David got engaged was deliberately chosen to be the day I went to New York, so not many people came to see me off. When I got off the plane and turned on my phone, messages kept coming in. Most of them were about Sophia and David's engagement. I laughed it off and deleted and blocked the contact information of those people. Before coming to New York, I met Olivia. I didn't want any complications and didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Olivia agreed with me. We exchanged rings and got engaged quietly. Only, there was an additional profit share of $100 million in my account, and there was a plain ring on the middle finger of both me and Olivia. I came back to my senses and was about to get in the car and go to Olivia's house when my phone suddenly rang. It was Mark, Sophia's cousin, who called and said, "James, my sister's engagement ceremony is about to start. Where are you?" I replied, "I just arrived in New York." He said, "Then you should come back quickly. It's still in time if you come back now." I calmly asked, "What would I go back for?" Mark was stunned for a moment and said, "James, are you so heartbroken that you've gone stupid? If you don't come back and teach David a lesson, my sister will really belong to someone else. I asked in confusion, why should I go back and teach him a lesson? Isn't this a happy event for your sister? Mark's voice suddenly rose, and he said, James, are you crazy? I was about to hang up when the voice in my ear became David's. James, aren't you coming to my engagement ceremony with Sophia? After all, Sophia regards you as her brother. Then I'm your brother-in-law. I'd really like to get your blessing. The two-person act was well played, but it was meaningless. I looked at Olivia not far away. She was leaning against the car, graceful and slender, with gentle eyes. My heart was also very calm. I said, okay, then I wish you two love each other until old age and be together for a lifetime. Sophia was wearing a very beautiful silk dress. Her hair was beautifully braided, and her makeup was light. At this time, she was eating matcha cakes with several girlfriends in the garden. However, from time to time, she would glance at Mark and the others not far away. She knew that these people were sending messages to James again, just like countless times before. Whenever a man appeared around her, these people would immediately tell James, and then James would come to find trouble with the other person, even fight. She seemed to hate James' strong control over her, feeling like she was being objectified. But actually, she understood that it was precisely because of this that she could take it for granted to dump those men. And this time, James would probably come to cause trouble as well, so she deliberately chose the day James went to New York. However, unfortunately, the auspicious time for the engagement ceremony was calculated to be at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Sophia was quite unhappy about it. After all, if James got the news, he could fly back immediately and probably just catch the start of the engagement ceremony. Her girlfriend said, Sophia, what if James runs back to find you? Another girlfriend said, yeah, you're getting engaged to someone else. I think if he knows, he'll probably be furious. But I've seen that he's been quiet these days. You and David have been so affectionate, and he hasn't made a sound. If it were before, he would probably have come to disrupt the event long ago. Sophia was poking at the tip of the cake with a fork but didn't eat it for a long time. Her mind was filled with the last two sentences her girlfriend said. James had indeed been very quiet recently, too quiet to be normal. But based on her understanding of him, he was definitely not this kind of person. Since childhood, she had rejected him so many times, but he always became more and more courageous in the face of setbacks and never thought of giving up. Now he seemed much more stable. Sophia suddenly thought of something, sneered, and put the small piece of cake into her mouth. She said, just wait and see. He won't leave me so easily. The girlfriend asked, Sophia, do you mean James will come back to make trouble? Sophia didn't answer, but she was extremely certain in her heart. James had been a lovesick fool since childhood. He was so good to her. No matter how willful she was, he could convince himself to tolerate her. Compared to his own dignity, he couldn't bear to see Sophia get the slightest bit of hurt. Sophia knew that James was just using a retreat as advanced strategy. She dared to guarantee that at the latest, James would appear before the engagement ceremony started. Sophia looked at the time on her phone and said, you guys have to tell the security later to be on the lookout and not let any strange people in to cause trouble. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Mark walking over with a swagger. Cousin, it's James. James is here. His car is already outside the door. Sophia felt a strange sense of joy in her heart, but then continued to say with a cold face, I think he just refuses to repent and just won't let me go. Mark replied, Sister, what are you going to do? If he makes trouble, our Sophia family will lose face. Sophia snorted coldly, stood up, picked up the hem of her dress, and walked out lightly. She said as she walked, I'll go and see what he's going to do to me. The girlfriends all followed Sophia out. But just as they left the garden, David called out to her, Sophia. David was wearing a well-tailored dark blue suit, paired with a plain silver, gray tie. The engagement ceremony was at 6 o'clock, and there were still a few hours left. David was anxious in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He asked, Why did you come out? Sophia stopped. Her gaze fell on David. David was very gentle and elegant, the kind of warm-hearted man who could easily make a girl fall in love with him, different from James' casualness. Because of his poor background, David's personality was a bit timid, and he always spoke softly. When she met David, she was extremely annoyed with James. So she easily fell in love with David. Moreover, different from those previous men, her acquaintance with David originated from a heroic rescue. Many women have such romantic fantasies of being rescued by a hero. So her feelings for David were very different from the nonsense with those previous boyfriends. David said considerately, I heard that James is back. I don't know if you don't want to continue with the engagement today, Sophia. I can understand. He smiled faintly, stopped talking, and just looked at Sophia's eyes sincerely. In a relationship, many men feel that they are not good at expressing themselves, or they don't know how to express their feelings for their partners. Expressing those delicate emotions makes them feel resistant during the narration, and they stop in the middle of being overly affectionate, forgetting the love words they were going to say. But there are some men who are also not good at speaking, yet they don't need to reveal their feelings. Just one look. One body movement can replace thousands of words. In this way, they don't need to say those overly affectionate words and seem very awkward, but they are still affectionate enough to make sensitive-minded women involuntarily feel a sense of maternal pity. At this time, David's eyes clearly had this effect. Sophia replied, "How could that be?" She shook her head vigorously, nestled into David's arms, and said, "David, don't worry. I will never go with him." David nodded, held Sophia's shoulders, and patted her gently. He said, "Sophia, I'm okay. No matter what choice you make, as long as it's what you really want, I'll be happy for you." David's eyes were slightly red, filled with obvious reluctance, yet the words that came out of his mouth were quite pleasing to Sophia. So Sophia rubbed against his chest coquettishly. At this moment, she wished she could stay in David's warm embrace forever. Mark's eyes held a triumphant smile as he said, "How could that be, David? My sister doesn't like James at all. He's arrogant, aggressive, and my sister can't stand him. There's no way she'd go with him." Mark also disliked James intensely, and his reasons formed a self-contained logic. Mark always considered himself the only male descendant of Sophia's family. Although his uncle and aunt were the bosses of the Thunder Group, and Sophia was their only daughter, he harbored a deep-seated fantasy. He thought that if James hadn't been adopted, as the only male in Sophia's family, they would surely entrust the family business to him in the future. His fantasy, like a wisp of light cloud floating in the sky, couldn't stand scrutiny, but it wasn't exactly despicable either. Perhaps if he thought it through carefully, he could distinguish between fantasy and reality. However, this fantasy was so deeply ingrained that it subconsciously intensified his emotions, making the false effect the real. So he hated James. Even though this hatred was based on a false set of logic, he couldn't control it because things that one dreams of but can't have always need an outlet. Over the years, his favorite thing to do was to see James embarrassed. Now that James had been sent to New York, few people in Sophia's family had seen him off. Even half a month ago, Mark had packed all of James's luggage and sent it to New York in advance, as if he was afraid that James would stubbornly refuse to leave. Mark was extremely happy now. Anyway, he would support whoever became his brother-in-law, as long as it wasn't James. Sophia suddenly looked at Mark in confusion and said, "Weren't you always on good terms with James?" Mark sneered, "How could I be on good terms with him? I hate James the most." Now that everything was settled, Mark didn't want to pretend anymore. In the past, he had deliberately pretended to be brothers with James. Now that he didn't have to pretend, he felt refreshed. So Mark didn't notice the strange expression on Sophia's face and continued talking to himself, "Sister, how about this? You stay with brother-in-law, and I'll go deal with James. Don't worry, I'll make sure he's thoroughly humiliated." Sophia asked, "What do you want to do?" He replied, "Get a few bodyguards to beat him up and throw him out of the gate. He dared to crash your engagement when you're getting engaged to someone else. If this gets out, his parents' coffins would be shaking." Suddenly, Sophia raised her hand, and the clear sound of a slap echoed. Everyone was stunned. Especially David, who frowned tightly, instantly feeling that something was seriously wrong. He saw Sophia's eyes gradually turning red, and Mark glared at her, growling, "Sister, what do you mean by this?" Sophia said calmly, "James is my nominal brother after all." Sophia's face was extremely ugly. She continued, "You usually call him brother, but secretly you want to humiliate him. You really disgust me." Mark gritted his teeth and retorted, "What do you mean I disgust you? What are you pretending to be now? Don't you actually hate him the most? Do you think no one can see your little thoughts? Why are you suddenly acting like a saint?" Sophia stood there, not speaking for a long time. Did she really hate James as they said? But when James first came to Sophia's family, they had the best relationship. Sophia would obediently follow behind her brother, sharing her favorite candies with him. She would pester her brother to tell her stories. She would tell others that her favorite person was her brother. When she fell and got hurt, it was James who comforted her and carried her home. When she was bullied at school, it was James who rushed to her side immediately to stand up for her. James had cared for her since they were young, and she had been the most dependent on him. At first, she really liked to stick to James. When did things change? Sophia suddenly felt a bit lost in her heart. David's sigh suddenly pulled her thoughts back to reality. She thought, yes, James must have changed first. After growing up, due to the favor of Sophia's family, he became more and more arrogant, with a wild and unruly personality, strong possessiveness, and overbearing. He wouldn't allow her to date other men and would often fly into a rage. That's why she grew to dislike him more and became more and more distant from him. It must be like this. That's why she wanted her father to send him away, to make him stay far away from her in New York. She did this just to make James respect her and understand that she wanted freedom. When he understood this, she would naturally go to him. With their relationship of so many years, how could she really be willing to be separated from him by such a long distance? But now it seemed that James was still stubborn and insisted on ruining her happiness on this joyous day. He was really hateful. As soon as he arrived, he turned Sophia's family upside down and also sowed discord between their siblings. This kind of psychology is not difficult to understand. It's easier to blame others than to admit one's own mistakes. It's safer to follow the established path than to change one's mind. Sophia had given James hints more than once, and she had even sabotaged James's relationships. But at this moment, she was complaining that James wouldn't let her date others, completely forgetting what she had done. It was she who slapped her younger brother, and it was her younger brother who was two-faced, yet she said that it was James's arrival that had made Sophia's family a mess. By ignoring the behaviors that were unfavorable to herself, the remaining chain of cause and effect could make a person feel that they were always in the right, thus making them feel as if they were always on the right path. Sophia thought she had figured it out, but she didn't know why she couldn't stop crying. She felt uneasy in her heart and subconsciously attributed this unease to James. So she hugged David tightly again and sobbed, "I'm sorry, David. It's all James's fault for ruining this nice day. I must talk to him clearly. David, I won't let him spoil our engagement ceremony." David wiped Sophia's tears, then let go of her and stood there, quietly watching Sophia's departing figure. He was restless. Mark's question just now made a lot of sense. Everyone knew that Sophia hated James the most, but she had slapped her cousin because of a few words from Mark. Did she really hate James? Or was James still different in the depths of her heart? When Sophia reached the gate, she didn't see James, but James's Honda Accord was parked there quietly. Standing beside the car was his best friend, William. Sophia's steps suddenly stopped, and her heart seemed to be gently tugged by something, sinking slightly. Then she remembered that James had given this car to William before leaving North Washington. William saw her and immediately walked over. Sophia saw a red envelope in his hand. William had a poker-faced expression and said straightforwardly, "James asked me to give this red envelope to you and David." Sophia didn't reach out to take it. William frowned and said, "There's another thing." Sophia asked, "What is it?" William replied, "James left in a hurry at that time and didn't have a chance to see you. He called you several times, but you didn't answer. So he hasn't been able to get back an antique jade bracelet that he gave you on your birthday. That was the token of love his father gave to his mother." William sneered and continued, "James said this jade bracelet was meant for his future wife. It's not appropriate to leave it with you now. Sophia, can you give me the bracelet? I'll take it to James when I go to New York to see him." Sophia suddenly lowered her eyes, and her gaze fell on the shiny ice green on her wrist. This morning when she got up to put on makeup, she didn't know why she chose this jade bracelet. It didn't really match her wedding dress, but she didn't change it. But at this moment, looking at this jade bracelet, she only felt it was glaring. This was the bracelet James was going to give to his future wife. Sophia didn't know why, but when she thought that James might marry another girl in the future and have a wife to sleep with, she felt a sense of discomfort in her heart. James liked her so much. How could he marry someone else? Now that he didn't come himself but sent William to ask for the bracelet, he was just trying to play hard to get with her. It was really hateful. After all, Sophia was indeed disturbed by this move. Seeing that she didn't reply for a long time, William called her, "Sophia." Sophia raised her head and said disdainfully, "You go and tell James that once a gift is given, there's no reason to take it back. Of course, if he's determined to have it, then let him come and talk to me himself." After saying that, Sophia turned to leave. But William stopped her and gritted his teeth, saying, "Sophia, wait a moment. I'll let James talk to you right now." William thought, ridiculous. James is about to get married. How could a jade bracelet with such special significance be left with another woman? James had repeatedly told him to make sure to take the thing back when he went to the wedding, so that he could put it on his wife's hand personally on the wedding day. Over the years, William had long been annoyed with Sophia. But James was so stubborn, like a fool, being strung along by her for so many years and then being dumped. William was so angry that he wanted to punch Sophia to death. Fortunately, now James had finally seen the light and found such a good wife. William was sincerely happy for his brother. This time, he must fulfill his mission. When I received the call from William, the car was almost there. I asked, "William, what's wrong?" He replied, "James, I went to ask Sophia for the thing as you said, but she wouldn't give it to me. She said if you really want it, you have to talk to her yourself." I subconsciously glanced at Olivia beside me and felt a bit guilty for no reason. I wasn't very familiar with Olivia. Even though her makeup looked sweet and bright, making people feel good at first sight, with peach-colored blush, a shiny light pink lip glaze, clear and bright eyes, and a softness with a bit of liveliness. However, the rich girl aura on Olivia still made people feel a bit distant unconsciously. Even when sitting in the car, she always maintained an elegant posture. When she lowered her head and smiled inadvertently, she still exuded a calm temperament. The natural aura of a wealthy young lady made me unconsciously become a bit restrained. Before I could say anything to William, the voice on the other end of the phone had become Sophia's. "James, do you want the bracelet or are you deliberately trying to make me look bad?" I was stunned for a moment, then laughed out of anger. She continued, "If you're trying to disrupt my engagement with David, then I advise you not to waste your efforts. If you want the bracelet, then take it back the way you gave it to me. After all, such a valuable thing, I won't return it through someone else's hands." I took a deep breath and tried to make my tone calm, saying, "William is my best friend. Just give it to him. I'll bear all the consequences." Sophia sneered and said, "James, how clearly do I have to say it? Take it back the way you gave it to me." Then she hung up the phone directly. I was furious. How did I give her that bracelet? On the night of my 20th birthday, both Sophia and I were drunk. She secretly pulled me into the bedroom and said she wanted to give me a gift. The next second, she stood on tiptoe and kissed me. I pressed her against the door and deepened the kiss. At the end of the kiss, she was out of breath and patted my shoulder. I finally managed to stop. Before leaving, I asked her to wait for me. I went back to my room, took the bracelet, and put it on her hand, and told her the meaning of the bracelet. She didn't say anything, just shyly accepted it. That's why I thought she had acquiesced and accepted my love. These past few years had been like a terrible dream. Now that the dream was over, I just wanted to completely break away from everything in the past. I thought Sophia would be eager to get rid of the bracelet like garbage and return it to me, but I never expected her to say such things. Only then did I realize that the absurdity of my youth would always come at a price one day. If this jade bracelet didn't have that special meaning, I wouldn't have wanted to take it back at all. But now that I was getting married, it wasn't fair to Olivia to leave the bracelet with Sophia. "Is something wrong?" Olivia's gentle voice suddenly sounded. I subconsciously looked up, and my eyes met her clear eyes. I didn't want to hide it, but because of our current unfamiliarity, I found it a bit difficult to speak. In the end, I still shook my head and said, "No." I was thinking that if necessary, I could ask Sophia's father for help. If that didn't work, I wouldn't mind using some tough measures. Anyway, I had to get the thing back. Having made up my mind, I gradually relaxed and said, "It's really nothing. Just a little thing in Sophia's father's family." I made a relaxed look, smiled at Olivia, and said, "I'll handle it." Olivia didn't ask any more questions, just nodded gently and said, "James, I believe you. But I'm your future wife. If you have any difficulties, you must tell me. I'll share them with you." Hearing the words future wife, I couldn't help but feel the back of my neck getting hot. I was already engaged. In half a month, Olivia would be my wife. Bitterness and anticipation intertwined in my heart. I smiled at her and nodded gently. When the car arrived home, I opened the door and got out first, then turned around to help her. I saw the engagement ring on her middle finger. Since she put it on that day, she seemed to have never taken it off. I helped her out of the car, and after getting out, Olivia didn't let go of my hand. Instead, she held my hand tightly. At first, I felt a bit embarrassed, but her palm was soft and warm, and I suddenly felt very calm in my heart, as if we were meant to be like this. From afar, Emily saw us walking hand in hand and immediately smiled with relief. Before we could get close, Emily quickly walked towards us, hugged me, and burst into tears, saying, "James, seeing you reminds me of your mother. I haven't seen her for so long." I suddenly felt a strong emotional upheaval. Although it was such a long time ago thing, the smell on her overlapped with the smell of my mother in my almost fading memory. Olivia stood aside and quickly joked, "Aunt, James is almost being strangled out of breath by you." Emily married Olivia's father when she was 40. She didn't have any children of her own in her life but regarded these children without blood relations as her own. Olivia had always respected her. I had known these things for a long time. So I had always been puzzled why Olivia would agree to this verbal engagement, as the whole thing had nothing to do with her. But Emily just told me to rest assured and said that I would naturally know the reason in the future, so I didn't ask any more questions. Emily laughed when she heard this, let go of me, wiped her tears, and said, James, come home with Aunt. I subconsciously looked at Olivia. She was also looking at me, with the green trees behind her, lush and green. When I looked over, there was a gentle smile in Olivia's eyes. She also reached out her hand to me and said, James, let's go home. 20 minutes before 6 o'clock, David had finished the preparations before the ceremony, but Sophia hadn't come out of the dressing room upstairs. David hesitated for a moment and then walked over. The door of the dressing room wasn't locked, and faint voices of conversation came out. A female voice said, Sophia, is James really not coming back? Another person replied, if he was coming back, he would have come by now. Even if he took a rocket, he couldn't make it in time. The female voice said again, Sophia, actually I've wanted to ask you for a long time. Do you really have no feelings for James at all? You grew up together, and he's always taken care of you and protected you. You've always been the only one in his heart. David's breath caught, and he subconsciously frowned. There was silence in the room for a long time. Then Sophia's voice slowly sounded, no feelings. Would you have feelings for a dog, like admirer? Sophia pretended to sneer with contempt. But she remembered that James wasn't much older than her. Yet he always took care of her and protected her like an elder brother. He made sure she was never bullied during her primary school days. She also remembered the night of James's birthday. She kissed him. But she was sure it was the effect of alcohol that made her dizzy and kiss him and accept the bracelet. The female voice said again, such a handsome dog, like admirer, I definitely would have feelings for him. Another person chimed in, yeah, several of my girlfriends have a crush on him. Do you remember the horse racing event last year? The female voice replied, yes, I do. James wore a black knight's jacket and won the championship. I still remember him standing on the podium, taking off his hat to salute, with a confident and hearty smile. Sophia certainly remembered. She also remembered that day when James gave a speech. He said that he wanted to dedicate this victory to the special her in his heart. That day, James was extremely happy. He kept showing off to her, showing her his medal and pony, and talking to her a lot. Seeing that Sophia ignored him, he teased, the lady who presented the award today was very beautiful. At that time, Sophia glared at him sulkily. It was not until he said that she was the only one in his heart and that he had only caught a glimpse of that lady out of the corner of his eye that she calmed down and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Both she and James loved horse riding. And James's pony was still raised in the Sophia family's horse farm. The next second, David suddenly pushed the door open, interrupting Sophia's train of thought. He called out her name, Sophia. David was wearing a dark blue single-breasted suit. It was almost an exact copy of the one Sophia's father had worn when he got engaged. Sophia's father came from an ordinary background. Back then, he saved a beauty in distress, which led to a beautiful marriage. Even today, many people still talk about it with relish. Sophia was most proud of her parents' deep love for each other throughout their lives. Perhaps that's why, when David saved Sophia, she developed special feelings for him. Now, David, standing in front of her, was as gentle and steady as her father in the old photos. Sophia's heart was once again surrounded by that so-called sense of fate. Many people believe in the word fate, either pinning their hopes on accidental coincidences or on metaphysical prophecies. That feeling is so strong that even if the relationship is lacking in some aspects, the throbbing brought by fate can fill it up. So, even though she had never thought of getting engaged and married to David, today, Sophia suddenly felt that she should complete this perfect engagement ceremony with him. David smiled at her and held out his hand. Sophia stood up, picked up the hem of her dress, and walked up to him. David said, I was worried when I saw you didn't come downstairs for so long. Sophia replied, it's okay now. Let's go over there. David asked, is everything okay with James? She answered, yeah. Sophia's eyes glanced over the jade bracelet on her wrist and said, James is arrogant and self-centered. It's best if he stays in New York for the rest of his life. I don't want to see him again. David felt a sudden joy in his heart. But on his face, he still showed a worried expression. Is that really okay? After all, he is your. Sophia interrupted, no matter who he is, I don't want to see him again. Sophia gently took David's arm, and David didn't say anything more. He led Sophia downstairs. It was 6 o'clock, and his engagement ceremony was about to start. From today on, David would no longer have to live that poor life. He wouldn't have to live in a mixed-up civilian house or squeeze into a small room with his brother. His family members would all rise in status along with him. Sophia was the only chance God had given him to cross social classes, and he would hold on to her tightly and never let go. Olivia and I set our wedding date for half a month later. The schedule was tight, but Olivia's family had actually started preparing for our wedding many years ago. So, although we were busy, everything was progressing smoothly. Ms. Emily told me that Olivia had a serious illness when she was a child. After she recovered, her father specially took her to worship Buddha. It was said that she must get married in September of her 25th year, and then she would live a long, healthy, and auspicious life. Olivia's elders believed in these things very much. When Ms. Emily first mentioned this marriage on the phone, she calculated my 8 characters. She said that Olivia and I were a match made in heaven according to our 8 characters. So, after I agreed to the engagement, the whole family was extremely happy. I received many precious gifts. The most meaningful one was an antique brooch left by Olivia's biological mother. When Olivia gave it to me, I felt very guilty. The most suitable gift for me to give her in return should have been the bracelet my father gave to my mother, but it was still with Sophia. Perhaps noticing that I was in a low mood, Olivia went for a walk with me in the garden. She asked, "James, are you unhappy?" She looked at me worriedly. My eyes fell on the shiny blue on my chest. Even if I didn't know much about precious things, I knew it was priceless. Since I was a child, I couldn't stand others being nice to me. For every bit of kindness they showed me, I felt the need to repay them 10 or even 100 times. I thought about the gifts I could give to Olivia in my mind, but I always felt that none of them were good enough. Already feeling extremely guilty, when I met Olivia's gentle eyes, somehow, my guilt turned into anger. My blindness in the past dozen years had made me a complete fool. I suddenly laughed out loud, but at the same time, my eyes became red with tears. Olivia looked at me in a panic, quickly took out a handkerchief from her pocket, and was about to wipe the moisture from the corners of my eyes. I waved my hand, casually wiped the corners of my eyes, and replied, "I'm not really unhappy. I just suddenly realized how stupid I was in the past." She was stunned for a moment, then said seriously, "No, you're not, James. No matter what you've been through, no matter what others say about you, I think you're amazing. As long as you put your heart into it, you can succeed in anything." She praised me so sincerely that I almost lost myself. I laughed and said, "Olivia, you're making me feel so embarrassed with your praise. Who can resist such flattery?" She suddenly blushed and said in a low voice, "I've only praised you." I asked in confusion, "Haven't you had a boyfriend?" She replied, "Does the one in kindergarten count?" I widened my eyes in an instant and asked in confusion, "Haven't you had one since you grew up?" She lowered her eyes and didn't speak, just shook her head. I asked again, "Then have you ever liked someone?" Olivia paused for a few seconds, then finally pursed her lips and said, "Yes, I have. But unfortunately, he didn't like me." I kind of understood. So, probably the person Olivia loved had someone else in his heart, so she became disheartened and agreed to this engagement. For some reason, I suddenly felt a bit of unease, but soon, I comforted myself. It was better this way. At least I wouldn't feel too guilty. Before leaving, Olivia said to me, "James, I hope you can truly consider me as your future wife in your heart. I know you always keep a lot of things to yourself, but if you can share some of them with me occasionally, I'll be very happy." After she said that, I felt that my heart seemed to open up a little bit. I nodded and said, "Olivia, I will." I gave Olivia a pink diamond first. It wasn't particularly expensive, but the ring setting was designed by myself on a whim. This gift was very sincere because when I designed it, I wasn't thinking about giving it to Sophia. At that time, I missed my parents, so I turned my thoughts into every line drawn with a pencil. The wedding preparations were in full swing, but we didn't announce it to the public. I didn't want to make a big fuss. After all, the matter between me and Sophia hadn't been completely resolved. When I left, Sophia probably decided not to see me again. So, almost all of my things were packed and sent to New York, including all the small items Sophia had given me over the past dozen years. Like a box of paper cranes she folded for me when she was a child, the candy wrappers left from the chocolate she gave me on Valentine's Day in middle school, and the tie she gave me on my first day of work. Among them, there was a special gift, a pair of engagement rings she secretly bought during college. They weren't worth much, but I cherished them as treasures. Because for a girl, a ring often has an additional meaning. Seeing it, I endured all of Sophia's willfulness. But now I gradually understand that when a person doesn't like you, even a marriage contract is meaningless, not to mention these material things. When I was sorting out the things Sophia gave me one by one, my heart was as calm as a still lake. In the end, when the box was empty, I felt an unprecedented sense of relief. Just as I was packing them up to send them back, my phone suddenly received several WeChat messages from the staff at the horse farm. My pony was sick. It was listless all day and refused to eat fodder. When I saw the photos, I was extremely worried. The staff said that the pony probably missed me because I used to visit it every few days, but this time I didn't go on time. I quickly called to inquire. The person on the other end said, "Mr. James, Sophia is here. Let her talk to you." I was stunned for a moment, and then Sophia's clear voice came through. "James, have you forgotten the promises you made when you first got this pony? How can you be so irresponsible?" Of course, I hadn't forgotten. All the children in the Sophia family had their own small pets, and the only requirement was that they had to be responsible for the pets they chose, take good care of them, and never abandon them halfway. I said, "Wasn't it you who asked Sophia's father to arrange for me to come to New York?" Sophia replied, "James, why do you always make excuses? If you really cared about the pony, you wouldn't have left it. You would have refused my father's arrangement and not come to New York. To be honest, you don't really care about your pony at all." At that moment, Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She seemed to hear her inner voice. James actually didn't care about her that much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have really gone to New York, wouldn't have been indifferent when he knew she was engaged, wouldn't have not shown up at the engagement ceremony, and wouldn't have asked for the jade bracelet back. I rubbed my forehead and said, "Sophia, I'm not in the mood to argue with you right now. I advise you not to make trouble. I'll find time to go back and see it. If possible, I also plan to bring it to New York." Sophia's voice trembled with a hint of resentment. "Do you plan to never come back to North Washington?" I lowered my head and smiled. "That's not impossible. Yeah, I was going to start a new family in New York. Naturally, my focus of life and work would shift here in the future, but there was no need to tell Sophia this. Sophia said coldly, "James, you always have to have the last word. Aren't you being childish? You'd better not regret it." I said helplessly, "What would I regret?" She replied, "David and I are already engaged." I asked, "So what?" She said, "We're finalizing the wedding date." I answered, "And then?" She said, "James, don't tell me you don't understand. If I really marry David." I laughed, feeling relieved and carefree, and interrupted, "Ha, sis, it's a good thing that you're getting married. Does your brother need to give you a gift?" Sophia suddenly fell silent on the other end of the phone. I didn't wait for her to say anything more and hung up the phone directly. When we were 16, we fell in love for the first time, and since then, our feelings grew deeper and deeper. She didn't allow me to call her sister, and she refused to call me brother anymore. Now, so many years have passed in a flash, and we've finally returned to the most appropriate position at the beginning. I'm not interested in hating her, nor do I bother to blame her. After all, we've been together day and night for so many years, and it's only right to give her a gift. I called Sophia's father. After greeting him and Sophia's mother, I gently brought up the matter of the bracelet. I said, "Uncle, I was young and ignorant in the past, and I made a lot of jokes. Now, when I think about it, I always feel regretful and ashamed. Since my sister is already engaged, I think it's better not to cause any unnecessary misunderstandings." Sophia's father sighed on the phone and said, "James, your uncle has always liked you very much and regarded you as his own son. Actually, I've always wanted you to be our son-in-law. Your aunt has been crying when she mentions you these days." I understood their sadness. In fact, I felt sad too, but this sadness was more because of the sincere love these two elders had for me. So I said, "Uncle, feelings can't be forced. A forced marriage won't bring happiness." He said, "Sophia is too willful. She just..." I interrupted, "It's okay, Uncle. Whomever my sister likes, she should marry. There's nothing wrong with that." He was silent for a long time, then said, "Uncle will help you get the bracelet back. In a few days, your aunt and I are going to New York to attend a wedding. I'll give you the bracelet in person then." I thanked him and hung up the phone. Just then, the staff for handling the consignment arrived. The packed gift boxes were loaded onto the car and would soon be safely delivered to Sophia. In a few more days, Sophia's father and the others would come to New York. After getting the jade bracelet back, those absurd things from my youth would be completely over. From then on, there would be no more connection between Sophia and me. After Sophia got engaged, she had more and more gatherings with her girlfriends. Once, when she went to the restroom, she heard William talking on the phone. William said, "Dude, I'm leaving for New York tomorrow. We've made an agreement. You have to ask your wife to introduce a bridesmaid to me." "What?" "Your wife has found 7 bridesmaids. James, you're my savior." Sophia was standing in the long and empty corridor. William's excited voice seemed to still be echoing in her ears, and finally, only the word James remained. Sophia thought she might be drunk. Otherwise, how could she hear such ridiculous words? Right, she must be drunk to have such a hallucination. Or maybe it was because she missed James that she mistook someone else's name for James's. Sophia leaned against the wall and staggered over, shouting, "William!" William, who had just finished the call, was startled and asked in confusion, "Sophia?" Sophia asked, "Who were you talking to on the phone just now?" She stared intently into William's eyes and said, "I heard you're going to New York to attend a wedding, and I also heard James's name." Sophia's cold and glamorous face showed a bit of distortion at this moment. Her always charming eyes seemed to have tears swirling in them. She smiled, but the smile was cold and desperate. She said, "Don't tell me you're going to attend James's wedding." At first, William didn't understand, but the next second, he realized what was going on. It was really a turn of events. Over the years, William had worried so much about James. At this moment, he felt extremely happy. The eldest daughter of the prestigious Sophia family was finally having a taste of her own medicine. Didn't she like to string people along? Didn't she like to watch those who liked her suffer from unrequited love? She would surely have plenty of chances to experience this feeling in the future. But William wouldn't tell her the truth. Since James didn't want him to, he definitely wouldn't. He wouldn't let Sophia know and go to New York to cause trouble. This was the most important day of his best friend's life, and he couldn't let this unlucky woman ruin it. He sneered and said, "You heard wrong. I'm indeed going to New York to attend a wedding, but I'm going with James. It's one of our former classmates getting married." Sophia seemed not to believe it and said, "I'd never heard that James has a close relationship classmate in New York." William twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "Sophia, have you ever really known James? Do you really know who James is? You just enjoy the process of being pursued. As for what kind of person he is, how he's living, and what his thoughts are, you don't care at all. So what you're saying now is nonsense. James is my buddy, one of the people I admire the most in my life. I'm telling you, I'm glad you two broke up. You don't deserve his love over the years at all." After saying that, William turned around and left. Sophia watched his receding figure, and her heart suddenly ached faintly. She didn't know why she felt this way. She just suddenly felt an extremely urgent desire to see James, even if it was just for a moment. But the next day, Sophia received a large box of express delivery from New York. She received it so quickly because Olivia had specially arranged for the shipping company to send it to Washington City by express plane. At that time, I was wholeheartedly arranging the wedding venue and knew nothing about it. When Sophia opened those boxes, her body trembled involuntarily. At first, the things inside seemed a bit unfamiliar, but gradually, overwhelming memories came flooding back like a tide. The first couple's bracelet she gave to James. James didn't like it very much. He thought it was too childish and would be embarrassing to wear in public, but he still put it on obediently. There were also the little stars, stickers, and a box full of colorful small gemstones she gave to James. At the end, it was the pair of engagement rings. Sophia held the small box, and her vision suddenly became blurred. A voice echoed in her mind, "Sophia, you're almost like James's tale. When are you going to marry him?" At that time, the children often joked with her and James like this with a smile. When she was 20, she was young, playful, willful, and proud. There were many boys chasing her, but she didn't like any of them because she had the handsome and cheerful James by her side. She held James's arm, making many of her girlfriends envious. She was very happy because such a wonderful James only liked her. At that time, she wanted to marry him. To be precise, a long time ago, she thought she would marry him in the future. That's why she gave him the cheap pair of engagement rings to show her feelings. But when did she start to gradually get tired of James? And when did a stranger replace her first love? Was it that she really had no feelings for him anymore, or was it because she was certain that he would never leave her? Sophia tightly clutched the ring and suddenly burst into tears absurdly. At that time, I was busy with the last rehearsal before the wedding, so naturally I had no idea how Sophia would react when she saw the gifts, big and small, from the past 10 years, especially the ring that I cherished so much. During the rehearsal, when I kissed Olivia for the first time, I also didn't know that Sophia would slap David hard because of that ring. How ridiculous. That day, David taunted and framed me, forcing me to fight back. None of us expected such a day to come. But now, both Sophia and David have become insignificant people in my life, and I don't care about them at all. When Sophia's father brought me the jade bracelet, I also told the two elders the good news of my upcoming wedding. They were very surprised because the wedding they came to New York to attend this time was exactly Olivia's. They never expected that the groom, who had always been mysterious and never been photographed by New York media reporters, was me. They were happy for me, yet they shed regretful tears. Especially Sophia's mother, who held my hand tightly and wouldn't let go, saying, "James, Auntie doesn't want to cry on your big day, but I'm really unwilling. It's my fault. I didn't educate my daughter well, which led her to make one wrong step after another." After that, she wiped the corner of her eye. These days, Sophia's family has been in chaos. The reason is that Sophia wants to break up with David, but David is determined not to. His whole family even came to Sophia's family to make trouble, threatening to stay there. Anyway, they had nothing to lose. When the two were in a fierce quarrel, Sophia happened to find out that she was pregnant, and it seemed that their marriage was going to be settled. I gently hugged Sophia's mother in return, my eyes slightly moist. Thinking of the days when I first went to Sophia's family, crying for my parents every night, and Sophia's mother holding me to comfort me, and those carefree years when they loved me like their own son, I said in a hoarse voice, "Uncle and Aunt, it's not your fault." Finally, she sighed and said, "My child, it's our Sophia who has no fortune. Auntie can see that Olivia is a good girl. You two will surely be happy. I know that a woman as gentle, considerate, and understanding as Olivia, even if she doesn't love me, our married life will still be happy and harmonious." But I didn't expect that happiness would be several times stronger than I had anticipated. When I put that jade bracelet on Olivia, she showed me a photo. In the photo, I was holding a trophy, smiling confidently and heartily towards a certain direction in the audience, and Olivia was standing beside me, looking at me with a smile. That year at the horse racing event, it was Olivia who presented the award and put the medal on me when I won the championship. But at that time, my heart and eyes were full of Sophia. I only took a quick glance at her and only knew that she was an extremely beautiful woman. Who would have thought that there would be a connection between us later? I smiled and, like a child, pointed at us in the photo but couldn't say anything. Olivia hugged me from behind and said, "Remember when I said I had someone I liked?" She touched the jade bracelet, rubbed her cheek gently against my back, and added, "James, I had already made up my mind. The moment I received that bracelet, I would tell you that the person I love is you." Until the wedding night, the bride shed her daytime reserve. I seemed to turn into a chef, stir-frying with great enthusiasm, tossing, stir-frying vigorously, non-stop, as if I wanted to cook a whole feast on the spot. The next day, I was so tired that I slept until late in the morning. While I was still sound asleep in bed, Olivia was already full of energy, going for a morning run, having breakfast, swimming, taking a bath, and so on. A few days after the wedding, the nanny in the house said to me with a smile, "Sir, you don't know how much Miss Olivia laughed that day." In all the years I've been in the Olivia family, it was the first time I saw her talk so much in one morning. She greeted everyone she met, not even sparing my little grandson. It seemed like Miss wanted to carry a big loudspeaker with her to tell the whole world that she was married and that she loved her husband so much. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I found an excuse to send the nanny away and sat alone in the garden reading the newspaper. From afar, I saw Olivia's car drive through the gate. As soon as she got out of the car, she started looking for me. I shouted, "Olivia, I'm in the garden," and waved at her with a smile. My pony was sent to New York yesterday. It was actually something Olivia did secretly behind my back. It was taken good care of during the journey and had no discomfort. When I saw it yesterday, it was happily running around Olivia. At this moment, I looked at Olivia and smiled, and I couldn't help smiling myself. I pushed aside the lush green plants in front of me and walked towards her, and she ran towards me as I walked towards her. I stopped in my tracks, opened my arms, and when she threw herself into my arms, I hugged her tightly. Sophia's story. If you like it, remember to share it. Sophia didn't know about James' marriage until the day it happened. At first, she simply couldn't believe it. She even naively thought that the so-called wedding was just a self-directed and self-acted play, just like her engagement with David, which had no real meaning. But when a friend sent her photos of James' grand wedding scene, when she saw James standing beside the bride in a high-end tailor-made groom's suit, saw her parents sitting in the VIP seats, saw William teasing the bridesmaids beside James, and saw the handsome groom kissing the bride with the bride crying happily, Sophia suddenly heard a crashing sound in her heart, as if something had collapsed. She was a bit dazed. She seemed not to hear what her friends were saying. Only one sentence echoed in her ears: "James is married." James, he had become someone else's husband. But since they were kids, didn't James like her? Since they were kids, didn't James hope that Sophia would marry him? Didn't James like her the most? On his 20th birthday, he had personally put that most meaningful jade bracelet on her hand. They clearly had an agreement. And if Sophia had no feelings for him at all, why would she have let James drive away one after another of her flirting male friends over the years? To be fair, she had been maliciously using James. At that time, as a young girl full of playfulness, as a wealthy young lady, there were always many suitors around her. She liked to watch those men fight over her, being obsessed with the plots in Western classical novels where noble ladies watched their lovers duel for them. But she also knew that she was just having fun and wouldn't really date any of those men. James had said that she had had 4 boyfriends, but he had made them break up after teaching them a lesson. But he didn't know that she had never dated those boys. After a few days of flirting, the noble lady got tired of it and naturally wanted to pull out. But being arrogant, how could she be the bad person who took the initiative to break up? So the childhood friend brother in the family became the best tool. She deliberately got people to incite James. James had a hot temper. As soon as he heard that some man was bullying Sophia, and after Mark or others exaggerated the matter, he would immediately rush over to teach those silly boys a lesson for her. And she, of course, pretended to be extremely sad, being forcefully separated by her brother, and had to break up, but secretly she was happy. She seemed to especially like to see James get angry for her, like to see him stay by her side because of her, being her most loyal knight, driving away those annoying suitors. He was both domineering and a bit sad. However, James would always forgive her. As long as she acted coquettishly, said some soft words, accompanied him to do what he wanted to do, and gave him some benefits, he would be happy right away. She thought this time would be the same. She thought that even if she did something really wrong, James would forgive her. James had lost his parents and came to Sophia's family since he was a child. Where else could he go? Everyone had tacitly assumed that they would get married in the future, even though Sophia had willfully engaged with David. But now, James had married someone else. He had a wife, a person to sleep beside him. Sophia no longer had the right to stand by James' side. The day James and his wife returned to Washington, Sophia had just had a big fight with David. She moved out of the house they lived in together and decided to completely break up with David. When a friend sent her the video of the hotel corridor, she suddenly realized that she and David had been trapped in a calculation from the very beginning. That seemingly gentle and kind-hearted guy was actually so despicable and vulgar. She didn't dare to recall what happened that day and didn't dare to think about how disappointed James was in her at that time. She wished she could go back to that day and strangle that despicable self. She and James had been together day and night for 15 years. Why did she humiliate him like a crazy person at that time? It was from that day and that moment that she completely lost James. So now, when James walked into the living room holding his wife's hand, she immediately saw the jade bracelet on James' wife's wrist. Her heart instantly felt like it was being pricked by 10,000 needles. The dense pain was overwhelming, and she couldn't escape it. But she forced herself not to lose her composure. She just quietly followed behind her parents, secretly looking at his current happiness. That day, Sophia didn't say a word and didn't even dare to look at James more than once. Her hand on her knee was already clenched so tightly that it almost pierced through the skin of her palm, but she seemed not to feel the pain at all. She kind of admired herself for being able to maintain a calm smile throughout. It was not until James was about to leave that she found her face almost stiff. When James left, he called out to her, calling her sister just like when he first came to their house as a child. Sophia heard it clearly and understood that James really had no more romantic feelings for her. The last words James said to her that day were, "Sister, I hope you can find your own happiness in the future." She nodded, but her heart felt as if it was raining heavily. She knew she couldn't do it, but she couldn't tell him. Sophia's story Chapter 2. After breaking up with David, the entire Sophia family was involved in a shameful and embarrassing turmoil. Sophia found out that she was pregnant, but she absolutely didn't want this child and was determined not to be with David anymore. She couldn't accept that her future husband, the father of her child, had been scheming against her since the first time they met. The so-called saving the beauty in distress and the reenactment of her parents' love story were all fake. It was just a careful plan by David to use her as a stepping stone to obtain a family fortune. She didn't want the child, but David stopped her and even brought his parents over. Sophia had never seen such unruly people. They were impervious to reason, resorting to all kinds of means like throwing tantrums and rolling on the ground. The Sophia family was an educated family, and her parents couldn't afford to lose face. She didn't even dare to call the police. Finally, unable to bear it anymore, Sophia's parents had to give them money to make them leave. But those people, having tasted the benefits, were even more reluctant to let go easily. They were like leeches, vampires, like maggots attached to the bone, like a never-ending nightmare. Sophia was exhausted by David's family, and her belly was getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, she decided to expose this cover-up. When the police came to the Sophia family and drove away those rowdy people, David seemed to understand that he had no more chance of winning, but he still extorted a large sum of money with the he had. On the day of the showdown, Sophia felt as if she was meeting David for the first time. He was cold-blooded, Philistine, greedy, and twisted. His proud face was extremely ugly. When Sophia's father gave the money to David, Sophia suddenly felt like laughing at herself, laughing at her own stupidity. Everything that she had been used to in her youth, the days she spent together with David in her youth, would eventually fade away and lose their freshness. But a real woman would love the man who fought with all his might to protect her, encourage him, and support him in his struggles. And she was undoubtedly a complete failure. Later, James' wife took his pony away. When Sophia went to the horse farm, the pony had already been picked up, leaving only her own horse standing alone in the stable. Sophia let it out, got on the horse, and galloped against the wind, round and round, tirelessly. Finally, she closed her eyes in the wind and let go of the reins. She didn't die, but she almost lost her life. Her parents cried heart-brokenly by her bedside. It was as if Sophia finally grew up at this moment. She endured the intense pain to comfort her parents, thinking in her heart that she couldn't live such a life anymore. Not long after David returned, he was sentenced to prison for extortion. The father-in-law who had made the most trouble and his half-brother were also imprisoned. The rest of David's family quickly dispersed like a tide. They had received some money before. Although they were not very satisfied, it was better than nothing, so they took the money and went back to their hometown. The life and death of these people, including David, had nothing to do with them anymore. Only David's stepmother, because of her son's imprisonment, almost cried her eyes out and hated David to the bone. These old people and old things far away in Washington City are like the gradually fading in color in old paintings, while James' new life is like a brand new scroll, slowly unfolding.